So Joel Cherkis works for Microsoft. He's been there for about 9 years. He's a worldwide public sector general manager of their global government industry sales group. What that means is he's responsible globally for a sales group that offers solutions and technology, scalable technologies to the public sector market around the globe. He's been with Microsoft for a number of years, and he's done a number of different roles in Microsoft, including heading up including a stint as a CTO, this Chief Technology Officer, for their worldwide public sector business. And in his role, he managed a global team of CTOs. Before that, Joel spent 9 years at Oracle Corporation, and there he developed service and technologies, again, to serve public sector as well as commercial sector customers. He began his career working for Mobil Oil. I think that Mobil Oil name has maybe it was fortuitous, or maybe it was omen of things to come in terms of working in a mobile world. But he worked as a developer with Mobil Oil. And that helped him to stay focused on understanding, and something that he does even to this day, is understanding how technology can interact and help in addressing business problems and help to provide solutions to solve business problems. He holds a master's degree in computer information systems from James Madison University, and he's here to talk to us and I believe challenge us in terms of our thinking of mobile technology. So please help me in welcoming your opening keynote, Joel Cherkis.
First off, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the opportunity that there is a 7-Eleven across the street, because I do live in Seattle, and I'm one of those people that without 8 or 9 cups of coffee in the morning, I'm just no good. So what I thought I would do today is talk a little bit about some of the key themes that I've heard within not only the state of California, but public sector entities around the world. And as Secretary Ramos mentioned, I have global responsibility for Microsoft's government business. I live in Seattle. I've been there about 3.5 years. I'm actually a native of Washington, D.C. In fact, I'm one of the few people that you'll ever meet that's from Washington, D.C. And after 41 years of being in the area, we decided to make a change and move to the West Coast. And I have to say we're thrilled by the change in scenery, the change in culture, and the change in opportunity. In my days, though, in the D.C. area, I focused very heavily on working with the federal government and state and local governments, and now I have that same opportunity around the world. And just to give you an idea, I have about 76 million users that every day unlock some sort of device to utilize the services that I'm ultimately responsible for. Many of these are mission-critical systems, a lot of these are back-office systems, and a lot of these are systems that are now being made available in a small screen format. And what I thought I would do was talk to you a little bit today around what we're seeing from a technology perspective, from an industry perspective around the world. And trust me, there were 2 commitments that I made prior to coming down to Sacramento. One was, I wouldn't make this all about Microsoft. My goal is to talk about technology and the role that technology plays in helping governments become better at governing their processes and interacting with their citizens. The other thing I promised I wouldn't do was I won't PILOC you. I don't know how many people know the acronym PILOC. It stands for the PowerPoint Induced Loss of Consciousness. And I promise you that I won't do that today. So I'll use a few slides to set the tone, but then what I thought I would do is actually use some real live systems. Show you a couple of things that are happening within the state of California, here locally within the city of Sacramento, across the US, and even throw a couple of things from outside of the US. All live systems to give you an idea and to spark some thoughts about how you reimagine government. And the reason this becomes important for us is if you look at the challenges that are there every day, every morning we all wake up to new sets of challenges. And the world is different. We don't find out about those challenges when we get to the office anymore. In fact, I live about 7 miles from my office. I live in Redmond, which is actually where Microsoft headquarters are, and I'm about 7 miles from my office. On an average day, it takes me about 12 minutes to get into the office, and between my house and the Microsoft campus, there are 2 obstacles that I have to fight every morning. One is the UPS sorting facility, and I have to make sure that I time my commute so that I'm not going to pass at the same time that those trucks go through. Now, while UPS is very good at delivering on time, their trucks tend to move in and out within about a 15 to 20 minute buffer based upon other things that are going on in the city. And for a while there, I said, I think UPS has a better way that they can manage this entire process. And what I found was that UPS, the logistic control system, actually looks at local traffic, and they move their fleet based upon what's happening with the local traffic every single day and every single hour. And I'm going to show you how they do some of that, because it's an application set that not only is available to any citizen within the United States, but citizens in 51 countries. It's an application that we as consumers have access to use, and it's a system that public sector entities have access to the back-end data to utilize for things like this planning, route control, those types of things. The other obstacle that I have to face every morning is a cement factory. So there's a factory where they actually produce a lot of the cement that the state uses for a lot of their concrete projects. Now what I found was the concrete factory doesn't use any of the traffic logistics systems or any of the management systems, and so you never know when those trucks are going to be coming out. So what I've started doing as a consumer, because I have to plan my commute, is I start utilizing my mobile device. And when I say mobile device, you'll notice I didn't say my Windows phone. Now, I do carry a Windows phone because I work at Microsoft, and I've got the new Nokia 920, and it's a beautiful phone. But the concept is that the applications will work on any platform, on any device, today, tomorrow, or 2 years from now, because they're going to change. And they're going to continue to change because the challenges that we see in the public sector will continue to change. What doesn't change is what public sector entities are trying to do. Governments are trying to address the key economic goals, the key impact focus that are happening within the public sector. Governments want to talk and focus on the societal impact that's occurring. And what we're finding is mobility plays a key role in that. And it's not just the mobile phone. I want to be very careful in stating that mobility is not about a mobile phone. Mobility is about the ability to access the information that you need in the manner in which you need it. That means outside of the borders of your office. That means beyond the mobile phone or the tablet or the coffee shop access. It means all of these things. It actually means being able to integrate information into the types of scenarios that are beginning to evolve, like within your car. So Toyota has a new system now where it integrates the nav system. It uses your mobile device to do all of the communications, but it does live routing and transportation and traffic management without purchasing an additional service. It also integrates things like search. Now, the last thing Toyota wants, or I think any auto manufacturer, is the driver to be touching the screen as they happen to be driving. But what they do want to do is institute this policy or this governance model that allow you to have access to information in the manner in which you need it. Typically in a car, it's going to be voice-based, or it's going to be accessed via another person in the car. So my car actually has the little screen that says, you're not allowed to touch the screen while you're driving. Is that okay? Unfortunately, I usually hit the okay while I'm driving. So I think there's some opportunity to improve there. From a government perspective, what we see typically around the world, there are three groups of people that governments are trying to service. Obviously, it's the citizens. The citizens are the most important focus because, especially in the United States, this is the population of people that are actually allowing government or giving government the opportunity to govern. It's a political process. We used to talk about the ROI in the government space. We've changed the term to ROV, which is the return on votes. It's the ability to discuss in a public forum what citizens are trying to do and how we can provide that level of support. And I say we, meaning government and the technology providers together. The second group of workers is the actual government work population. This, just so you have an idea, around the world, this represents about 80% of the spend in IT. It's to support this population so that the systems that government workers need to do government actually work. The challenge we run into is the technology is available to do so many different things nowadays, and there are policies, there are laws, there are political reasons that technology is being implemented, and the end result is that we see technology being implemented for the sake of technology. In fact, I was recently in Spain, and the central government of Spain has a struggle now because they had a mandate that said, it was a political campaign promise, the mandate was that every system that was a a paper-based system or a system that required somebody to go and meet with somebody in person become an e-government type of a system, move to an online environment. And what they found was that by doing that, it fully enabled a whole new world of opportunity. The challenge is their budgets for running their systems went up by 60%. So they've now e-enabled all of their systems, but they don't have the budget to sustain that. And it takes the word sustainability and moves it into an entirely different world. So we have to keep in mind what the ultimate goal is and then figure out how to embrace them, and I'm going to talk about that here. The third group of people, forgive me, is the government leaders. Making sure government leaders have access to information very quickly, very easily, so that they can make decisions. That's ultimately what has to happen, and I'm going to show you how we do that. The other thing to realize is government will continue to evolve. And you know what? I actually have to give kudos. I'll give kudos to everybody in the room that's focused day to day on the government business, whether you're in the public sector or in the private sector. Because for the first time since I can remember, and I've been focused on supporting the public sector for about 18 years, I should also state I have a volunteer position with the City of Redmond, so I'm actually on the Parks and Trails Commission. I'm a City Council appointed commissioner for Parks and Trails because I'm a big outdoor person in the city, and I volunteer my time as an interested citizen to participate. I separate my Microsoft responsibilities. When they walk in with iPads and Android devices, I just smile and say, that's great. But what excites me is the opportunity that the device opens. And services like Secretary Ramos mentioned about using geospatial information and location finders, trail maps, those types of things. We're beginning to see that come up as a service. What we're also seeing is that government typically is not the organization that are building these. This next generation of government is all about taking information that government has access to and unlocking it, and letting the people, letting the citizens, letting the private sector, letting academic research programs capitalize on that data. So there's a project that was started right around, or actually it was about 30 days after President Obama came into office in DC. It was called data.gov. And Vivek Kundra was the CIO for the US federal government at the time. And the model of data.gov was to unlock data that was not identifiable data for any citizens and take the data and make it available on any type of form factor so this next generation of government could evolve. And the end result of this process is that there's this entire new set of scenarios that government is able to look at that support the citizens, it supports the workers, and it supports the leaders. So this is just an example of what some of these scenarios are, and what we're seeing is, we're seeing a local economic model where companies, ISVs, small system integrators within the state, within the cities, within the counties, or globally within the regions that are now able to generate a business and start to evolve and create applications that are very scalable. They are easily updatable because the complexity of the applications is scaled down to be able to support the smaller screen devices or the increased demands of the application as the screen size does increase, because some of the small screen devices are growing while some of the big screen devices are shrinking. Now, when we look at the end result, we end up with a more connected government. We have the ability for citizens to have better connectivity points. And I was talking about my commute into work every morning, where I am a consumer, I'm a citizen, and I'm using my mobile device. And in all reality, I'm typically on the phone in the morning. Now, we have a hands-free law within the state of Washington, so I have a Bluetooth system. And what I do, I get in my car and I pull up my calendar, I find whatever meeting I'm supposed to be on, whatever conference call, I hit a button that says join the call, and off I go. And while I'm commuting into work, I can actually have the conversation that I need to have. I can't see the slides. I can't interact with my hands because of the way the laws work. But the mobile device becomes a facilitation tool. And when I walk into my office, when I get out of my car, I take the phone, I either put it on my Bluetooth headset or I carry it. I sit down at my desk and the meeting instantly transfers over onto my desktop. So the ability to have collaborative services from a worker perspective become critical. But what about those same services for an interactive one-to-one experience between government and citizens? So think of a scenario. Think of the scenario that Secretary Ramos had mentioned about needing to make acquisition of a water heater, or even to confer with somebody, to crowdsource the idea. I have a water heater that looks like this, of this serial number. Who has good ratings around one of these? In fact, I'll even give some interesting input. About 6 years ago, We did a study from a Microsoft perspective to find out, this was when we were about to launch Bing, the Microsoft search engine, and we did a study to see how people collect information when they need a trusted response. And at the time it was Google. People would go to Google and they would do a search for something. So if they needed a new water heater of a certain type, they would go to Google, they would do research. The end result was, here's a list of the water heaters that are available. You might be able to find a review or two that were out there. A couple of years later, Yahoo had increased their abilities. Bing had come into the market. And similar models, people would use a search engine. Well, about 4 years ago, I've noticed this transition begin to appear. And think about it now, and you don't have to shout it out loud, but think about it. So today, if you wanted to get a new water heater, or better yet, I'm traveling to Sacramento, if I wanted to find the best coffee house in Sacramento, how do you think I would find that today? I probably wouldn't go to Google or Bing. I wouldn't go to Yahoo. I might use a location-based service when I get here that said, show me what's nearby and show me some ratings that happen to be there. But where do people typically go now to find things from, who's their trusted population of people online that they talk to? Social media, right, it's their friends. So I post on Facebook and I said, hey, peeps in Sacramento, I'll be down there tomorrow. Literally, I did this yesterday. And I said, where do I was actually inquiring because I wasn't sure what time my flight was today. I wanted to see if there was a good place for dinner tonight before my flight. And I said, talk to me, tell me what's going on. And what was interesting was I had friends that don't live in Sacramento that have either lived here in the past or traveled here quite a bit that were now participating with me in a one-to-one interactive experience, although this was one to a few because my other friends could see what they were responding back. And forgive me, I don't have the whole list in front of me. I was scrolling through all the other Facebook things this morning. But social media becomes a facilitation tool. The government didn't build a social media tool. Microsoft didn't build that social media tool. The population, the reimagining of how people interact build the social media tool. That's what's happening in government. And I was at the Gartner Symposium last October in Orlando. I don't know if anybody else was down in Orlando. Yeah, Orlando. At the Gartner event, Gartner had an industry day for government on the Sunday before the actual conference started. There were about 1,000 people from the government space. And there's an analyst named Andrea DeMaio, who's the global government lead for Gartner. And he said, you know what? He said, I have to tell you, something's changed in government. I don't know how or why, but it's amazing. Because when you look at new technologies like cloud and mobility, and where the consumerization of IT fits, for the first time in about 12 years, government was not at the bottom of the 10 industries. And somebody quizzed him. I think it was the CIO from the state of Delaware. And the CIO said, Andrea, I just have a question. Why would government have been at the bottom for so many years of the 10 industries that you rank, manufacturing, retail, oil and gas, energy, et cetera? And he said, you know what? Government is typically risk adverse. They have a very delicate population of people that they have to serve, and they have to serve them very well. And you know what? Everything is based upon the risk. There are laws, there are policies, and there are politics. It's all based on the risk. And he said, but things have changed now. Things have changed. The budgets are cut. There are austerity measures that are occurring. And governments not only have to do more with less, they have to do new things with less. The demands of government to do new with less are greater than in any other industry. I do have an oil and gas background from many years ago. I wrote very exciting systems that did things like controlled valves within pipelines. Super exciting, right? So I wrote a system that literally, there were 2 floors of a building in Dallas that had modems that reported the angle of a valve every 90 seconds for government regulatory reasons. And there are probably exabytes of data in that COBOL system that I wrote that are still creating data. And in fact, you talk about big data, those are the types of big data systems that are out there. Big data doesn't mean lots of data, it just means a lot of data that you have to ask very interesting questions to. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. From a trending perspective, mobility is really one of the 4 mega trends that we see these days. I mentioned social, and I don't mean social from when we're outside of work or even on a break or just on a side chat, having a social experience. It's how socially people are interacting from the consumer side into the public sector side, into the commercial side. It's how people interact together. Mobility is by far and above the fastest growing area. It is the buzz topic that is occurring, and the excitement that we're seeing is happening everywhere. And I was delighted to hear the number of apps that are now being delivered from the state level. And if you look at the county levels, the city levels, even the central government level, look at the federal government. The whitehouse.gov is running on all of the mobile devices that are out there now. So you can watch a Google chat from the President of the United States with whoever the group of people. I think the last one I watched, there were small business owner, there was a school, there was a single parent, and there were 2 other entities. And they were having just a conversation. And it was happening, and I was watching it. A guy was sitting next to me, and he had a Galaxy Tab, and we were watching it on his device. And he said, how does that make you feel? Microsoft, I'm looking at Galaxy, whitehouse.gov's running on Drupal. And I said, you know what? They're exposing information, and they're inviting people to participate in ways that they haven't participated before. That makes me feel good. It absolutely makes me feel good from a technology perspective because it's growing. The other 2 big trends, the cloud and big data, so they are one is the platform of the facility that makes mobility work. So the cloud, whether it's public cloud or private cloud. And I had a great conversation last night with Secretary Ramos, with Tim, with some of the team. And we talked about big data, and we talked about mobility, and we talked about the roles that social play in each one of these areas. The interesting thing is when you look at the number of devices, in fact, I looked around the room, I've noticed that most people have, obviously, I think everybody has a mobile phone. Some people I saw had 2 mobile phones. I've seen some people that have 2 mobile phones and an iPad. I think I saw one person with 2 mobile phones, an iPad, and a Samsung Galaxy. So my preference is to consolidate, to go with less devices, and I think that's the general path that's happening out there. But when you ask people why they have multiple devices, they have multiple uses, and there are multiple reasons to do that. What's happening, though, is there is a consolidation of devices, and there are rapidly, the price of the devices are coming down, and we are very quickly approaching the concept that there are, well, in the next couple of years, there'll be at least 1 billion devices that are turned on, connected to the internet at any point in time. Now, that's just the devices you and I interact with. I'm not today going to go down the path of what's happening with other devices. The sensors, because sensors become a whole different world, and that's that big data world. And I'll give you just a quick example. If you look up in the ceiling, you'll see air handlers in any one of the facilities where you happen to be. And I do a lot of work with energy management organizations, a lot of the municipalities, state grids, and then the energy efficiency, smart building world. The challenge that organizations have are when they look at things like an air handler or any piece of equipment, it's very expensive to replace that piece of equipment, or it's expensive to support that piece of equipment if you don't know when it's going to fail. And so by placing sensors on these types of things and having a way to ask questions around what is the expected failure rate of an air handler in the ceiling, and the next time a facilities person walks in the room, it rings their mobile device and said, you know what, hey Mary, you're the public works person and you happen to be in the convention center. I need you to go up to the ballroom and I need you to check out, maybe it's just to lubricate the damper of some sort, but I need you to go check this particular thing. That becomes maybe a 15-minute or 30-minute, I don't know the process. That's far cheaper than all of a sudden having a room that's too hot or too cold and having to call in an HVAC company overnight before a big event occurs. Or what if a transportation person, a maintenance worker, were to get a ring on their device because a bus were nearby and it said, you know what, we think the bus on that tire is going to rupture in the next 3 weeks. Just based on history, based on the tread depth that's out there, based on the amount of miles, based on the number of right turns or left turns that bus makes, there's a good chance that's going to fail. And instead of me asking that question via a mobile application, the mobile application tells me because it knows I geographically am nearby. That's where all of the mobility play starts to come in. That's where big data starts to play, and it uses the cloud as a facility to do that. From an enabling perspective or an empowering perspective, this is where everybody in the room has the ability to raise their hand and say, what if? And I think the goal of today's event, the entire event today, is to sit down and say, what if we looked differently at how we approach the mobile space? What if we looked differently at how we engage our citizens? What if we look differently at what our expectations are on our workforce so they could be more efficient in what they do and thus ultimately save dollars? When I was in line for my coffee at 7-Eleven, I was actually talking with a city worker. It was a gentleman from Public Works, and I actually asked him because he had a device that it's a mechanical device. I think it has something to do with the way the electricity runs, and he can measure or he can meter voltage and things like that. It was kind of a clunky device like you'd expect in NASA in the late 60s. And so he has this thing kind of connected on this little sling while he's standing there, and then in his hand he actually has a small, I think it was an Android phone, and he was flipping through, he was looking at sports scores, and I said, just kind of jokingly, I said, it's too bad you can't do all of that on the device you got there on your strap. And he's like, oh yeah, my anchor. And I said, tell me about that. And he said, we use it for metering electricity and things like that. He said, but the storyline is that we'll ultimately be able to have a sensor connector onto a small device that he brings into work, and that he'll be able to do his same job. And think about that. If somebody can bring a device into work, which I think most of us probably do of some capacity, we bring our mobile phone or we bring our iPad or Slate or whatever it happens to be into the office. If we can use that to do the things that we need, regardless of the access or the type of information, that becomes a huge advantage. It becomes a huge cost reduction, and it becomes a huge opportunity for us. That's the direction, or that's the path. Because ultimately, it's about the application, and it's about access to the data. That's what we're trying to build for. There's no, I shouldn't say there's no pride in ownership of the physical device, but the physical devices will change. I mean, think about this yourself. Most people have a mobile phone with if you have a call plan, so I have an AT&T plan on my phone, and every 2 years, AT&T says, you know what, Joel, you've been rewarded for not smashing your phone or losing your phone or dropping it in the toilet, although we always say it fell in the pool. You've done that too. We're rewarded. And AT&T says, you know what, I'm going to let you get a new phone at a discounted price. They're going to augment the price of the actual physical device to get there, and a new device is there. And it's got new capabilities. It may have new GPS capabilities. It's got new video, audio. It's got more space. It does different things for music, things like that. Bluetooth stack is better. All of those capabilities exist. But really, ultimately, I can get rid of that phone. I plug in a new phone. All of the new apps are available, or all of the apps that I had. Typically, in today's world, when I log into a new phone, it just puts all of my new apps on the phone. It downloads all of the content. It connects all of my cloud stuff. It happens very simply and easily because the cloud is backing everything up for me. That's not just in the consumer space, that's happening in the workplace. It's happening in the private marketplaces that are occurring so that people have access to information anywhere. The trick is how you compartmentalize the information within the organization so that only the right information goes to the type of device that you want. Now Microsoft actually, because I have a phone that I put on the Microsoft network, so when I unlock the phone, I know it's hard to see, it asks me for a PIN. I didn't put a PIN on here because I'm overly concerned if I lose the device, somebody would have access to my phone, although I should be. The PIN is here because my Microsoft IT organization said, you know what, Joel, you download email to that device and we'll let you connect to our document management system. That means you may have sensitive information that we don't want someone else to be able to get. And they set policies around the device. And it's not just a Windows phone. If you're a Microsoft employee, and God forbid you have an iPhone or an Android phone, which there are plenty, our IT organization works the same way. They force a PIN upon that device, they manage that device, and in the event that the device is lost, stolen, whatever it happens to be, the IT organization can send a bullet to the device and it will wipe the device clean if the device is on the network. If the device is not on the network, then it is just a PIN-based password with an encryption package on it, so that if somebody can get past AES 256 or triple DES encryption, which is what the National Security Agency uses as their standard, then we have a problem. But we've decided that's the level of risk. So the types of devices, the types of application, the types of data, there has to be a strategy around who has access to what and how you want to manage it. It has to be a manageable platform. The beauty is the manageable platform from Microsoft, from Oracle, from Google, from Apple, from Amazon, they're interoperable, and that's the beauty. They have to be interoperable and open. And there was a comment last night in the conversation that said, well, what if I'm using the cloud and I decide that cloud provider is not the provider I want to participate with anymore? I want to be able to go to a different cloud provider. How do I take my information? How do I close my email account from Gmail and move it to an Apple Cloud account or to a Microsoft Hotmail or Outlook account? And here's the more important part. How do I know that my information is really gone from that other system? Most consumers, other than people who are very heavily focused on data protection and privacy, most consumers go, they told me it's gone, I feel pretty good. And you know what, I'll take them at their word. I read the end user licensing agreement and I'll take them at their word. In the public sector space, it's different. There has to be not only the end user licensing agreement and the service level agreements, but these capabilities have to be able to be proven. And you as an entity have to be able to audit an organization to say, is my information being handled the right way? Because it could be stored on a mobile device with from somebody who was a government worker that is no longer a government worker. What about that scenario? They've downloaded the information, they have the access, they're no longer connected into the network. Then what happens? Well, the technology exists. There's lots of technology. These are not these tens of millions of dollars of security software packages. It's standard interoperability-based applications, but this is a foundational element for how people look at mobility and the role that mobility plays. Because the goal should be that any device that sits within the compliance guidelines can have access to the system, and you, from an IT administration perspective, will decide what the policies will be, and the devices can participate without ultimately killing the device. Meaning that you don't download so much information or so much security that the device can only be used for that very specific purpose. That's the ultimate goal. We also know that workers are on the go. In fact, most workers in the government space that traditionally had a desk job don't sit at their desk to do a lot of their work. I guarantee when I walked by this Starbucks line this morning, because it was a long line and everybody was heads down looking at their device and doing the things they need to do, most people are doing email. Some people will be looking at the news or scores or things like that, but people are looking at email, or they're looking at text messages, or in some cases they're looking at instant messaging applications that are running on the device. Our focus, just so you know, from a Microsoft perspective, we have an instant messaging and presence tool called Link. When we built Link, the Microsoft Office division sat down and said, we need to build this to run on any device that any of our users would need. Well, our users for Link were enterprise users. And we realized halfway through the development processes a couple of years ago that we had a gap in our strategy. Because if you're a government and you want to interact with other governments, other private enterprises, other enterprise organizations, you can use enterprise-ready tools. And you can use them on small screen devices. But what about the citizens? What about the consumers? And what about when a citizen actually were to sit down and say, I want to participate with government, and I want to be able to interact? How do we do that? Do we do it via message? Could we even send a text message to them? Wow, wouldn't that be great? Government interacting in a text message, one-to-one relationship? Or what if we wanted to be able to do something like video or make a call? And what role do consumer applications play? Things like Skype. That becomes very, very interesting and very compelling because it allows government to be much more responsive than government has been able to be in the past. And that's ultimately where we're trying to go. We're trying to allow government to be as responsive as government needs to be. Now, to do this, what I thought I would do is take a few minutes and show you. And I'm going to cross my fingers that all of the technology is working the way I want. And what you're looking at is, you're actually looking at my live machine. This is my Joel Cherkis machine, so I'm frantically looking at the screen to see if any of my live tiles are showing anything that you're not supposed to see. Because this really is my inbox and my Facebook. Carter Hubbard likes my photo, that's good. So this happens to be my Windows 8 machine. I carry one of the Surface Pro devices. And I have an entire set of applications that are live applications. And I want to start one of them off just to give you an idea of what these look like. And I'm going to use a hometown application. So we have a great partner with a company called Keynote Consulting. And speaking of partners, I would highly encourage you to take the time today to go through the pavilions downstairs and make sure you see some of the great solutions that are there. This particular application I like a lot because it actually crosses many borders and many boundaries. And what this application does is the Regional Transit Authority participated with the consulting organization and looked at one of the biggest needs or the biggest goals that public transportation users need, which is how they can find where to go to find public transportation and how soon the next vehicle, device, whatever it happens to be, will be available. And so what I'll do is I just happen to select a bus stop that we're here, just on the other side of the convention center. And you'll notice what it did was it pulled up a list of bus routes over on the right-hand side. And what you're seeing is you're actually seeing live information. And if I were to select, so I picked the 170 bus. Actually, what it's doing is it's downloading the information. And it'll highlight the route for me. And what this does is it actually allows me to start to interact in ways that I couldn't interact before. And I'm showing it from a desktop screen, actually from an application that I'm running here. The same types of applications will run really on any type of screen these days. But it's a live application. This will show me how many minutes before the next bus actually arrives. And when I can see the bus, I can then literally click on the bus, and it will show me the view in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is what's interesting. The geo map you're seeing on the left is Bing, so it's a Microsoft product. The view, that the actual image that you'll see on the bottom right is from Google Maps. And it shows the street side view that Google can show to show what the bus stop would look like, so that you'll know what your stop looks like when you need to get off, or what the stop looks like if you're actually heading to be able to get there. And it will actually literally plot the buses across the screen. And you'll be able to start to interact with the application in a way that most people haven't been able to in the past. Now, this is just an example of a mobile-based application, very simple concept that's out there. This is very much a consumer-driven application, and I'll give you an idea. While Kiefer Consulting built that application because it has some very good richness, it has great service level agreements, using the data that's available from public transit and allowing or sponsoring things like hackathons or code fests and using local university students to build applications using open data and open government become an easy facilitator to get large numbers of applications out into the marketplace almost instantly. I just sponsored an event that actually was held in Bangkok, and it was a Southeast Asia hackathon. And ultimately there were about 20,000 people that participated. Most of them were university students. And what they did was they put prizes out. And the prizes were, it was $5,000 for best app, $2,000 for second best app, and $1,000 for third best app. And at the end of the day, 60 apps were actually delivered that were able to be utilized within the private sector. And companies then were able to go into an auctioning model to decide who was going to buy what. Public sector entities actually had a different model. The public sector entities didn't have to pay for the applications. It was just part of the agreement because the government actually sponsored the event. The government could actually take the applications and the IP, but one of the things they had to do was consider hiring the developer or the developers, which are usually one or two people. And again, it brings that bond together and it makes it more modern. Just to give you an idea of what one of these apps would look like, and I'm actually showing you kind of the final version of one of these apps. Scorecard apps. The ability to look at information that is critical for government to be successful, this becomes a huge opportunity for government. And this one happens to have a list of KPIs that governments will typically focus on, like citizen and business services, obviously economic development, health and human services. Here, I'll use transportation since I was talking about bus lines. Now, the KPIs that you're seeing are a subset of a group called the Global Cities Indicator Facility, which the World Bank publishes. There are 115 indicators the World Bank publishes. This is a list of what some of those indicators are. The data you're seeing is actually, the data is connected to the city of Toronto. We did a project up in Toronto, and they gave us access to their data set for a limited time, so what you're seeing is actually a version of that data. And we can drill down into any one of these specific areas. So this happens to be public transportation trips per capita. And the data already existed, but there was no easy visual way for people to see this. Well, I guarantee the leadership team in the Transit Authority, when they have access to this data and indicators start to appear on their mobile device, or they get a text message that says, you know what, the wait time for buses is too long. We need to put more buses in service. Do we want to figure that out because there's a long line of people at the bus stop, or do we want to figure that out because the weight of the bus exceeds the standard weight, and we know that there's more ridership? Do we want to be able to overlay things like weather data to know that when bad weather comes, more people take public transportation because they don't walk? I should know that, and I should have that built into my forecast. We want to take advantage of all of these pieces and put them all together. So, one other piece that I just wanted to highlight. was where I see the future of transportation going. And I just decided transportation would be a good theme. This is a company called INRIX. They're a small private company, small meaning a couple of hundred people. They actually are based up in Seattle, so I spend a lot of time with them because they're nearby. They're a traffic management company. What they do is they track information from sensors. They collect 850 billion data points a month, and they allow entities, organizations, public sector groups to analyze the data to do things that become interesting, because this is showing live data around traffic right now in the Sacramento area. Well, the interesting question isn't always what does traffic look like right now? The real interesting question is what will traffic look like today when I'm leaving work? So if I need to head out today at, let's say, at 6:15, what will traffic look like? And all of a sudden, you see predictability analysis that's occurring based upon information that has been collected over the years. This is where the analytics of the 850 billion data points, which actually are being collected from over 51 countries around the world, becomes interesting. And if a big data organization were to then take that, and so this is a live website that takes the same data. I don't have Sacramento data loaded into this. This is a big data engine. So this is for the techies in the room. This is a Hadoop Hortonworks integration. It runs on a Microsoft Azure backend service. And what this does is this allows me to look at raw data, so I can actually see just rows and rows of really interesting data that are coming off of public safety vehicles, city buses, taxis, Domino's and Pizza Hut delivery vehicles, UPS trucks, FedEx trucks, DHL. It's all being aggregated into a repository that allow me to do something that I've not been able to do in the past, which is this concept of what-if scenarios. What I used to have to do was go to an academic research organization, and I would schedule time, and it would cost me $200,000 to create a semantic model to ask a question. What will traffic look like in Sacramento, or in where I happen to live? What will traffic look like in Redmond 5 years from now based on economic growth of 3%? That was a hard question to ask of the data, and it cost me a lot of money. Today, I can say, you know what, how about this? Let's look at economic growth in the Seattle area. In fact, let's put it up, let's just max it up here to say 4%. And let's look out at 4 years, 5 years. And you'll notice the colors on the screen are changing. These are live big data questions being answered. It's crunching through exabytes of data instantly. And the cost for me, the chargeback model that I have, it's costing me somewhere around 25 cents per query. The models have shifted dramatically, and I say this because it's not just about the mobile device. It's not just about the small screen. What it comes to, or where the big opportunity ultimately lies, is in our ability to come together, to bring together each of these opportunities. And so I think the thought that I'd like to leave you with here is, as you think about government, think about how you reimagine the processes, the things that you think about, because it's not nearly as complex as it was when I wrote COBOL 20 years ago. I didn't have to schedule time with batch and JCL strings, or find the person who wrote the JCL string and swap my data sets and all this crazy stuff. Today, I can go out to a website that the state runs today. I can access data. I can challenge a local university or an MBA program with a bunch of really talented research students to help me solve a problem. So together, not just in the public sector and the private sector, but the crowdsourcing discussion becomes the platform and the facility for us to get there. What I will highly encourage you to do is I put my email address up here. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. We have a great team, obviously, of Microsoft people. We have a booth downstairs. I'd love for you to visit them. Visit all of the people in the booths. The other thing is we get a lot of questions around how do we get into the development space, or what are the thought processes around development for small screen apps. So I posted a link up here, which is just a short version that'll link you right to it. And this is basically an area where you can consider how you build apps. It's a hosted site by Microsoft, but it talks about things like Hadoop and integration and interoperability and all of the different areas where I think you'll have big opportunities. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I think you're going to have a great event, so thank you.